Great, thank you. So Mail is out today. I'll be leading the meeting today. As usual, why don't we start out with an introduction round? I think I recognize everyone in the chat, but in case someone is new, feel free to introduce yourself to the community. Okay, then let's get into the agenda. Sudeep, I think you had the first item. Do you want to go ahead? Oh, I think you just joined. Hi, Sudeep. We're going through the agenda. Do you want to cover the first item on the list? Okay, seems like he's having some audio problems. Why don't we come back to you when you get it working? Rodolfo, do you want to go? I do not see them in the list of participants either. Okay, so
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So my topic is to understand how we are addressing the RAID, BIOS, disk partitioning, and also the network interface configuration. These kind of aspects of a host at the time of provisioning bare metal host. How we can modify these configuration according to that is needed for organization. So I was also looking at the details which was put up by Jhao. So I suppose those are related to RAID and BIOS, right? So if anyone can elaborate further on that. Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you. So for the RAID and BIOS configuration, it looks like there's some PRs up to enable that. Maybe we could chat about that in a second. For the network interface configuration, I'm not familiar with SRIOV. Is that something that you configure in the operating system, or is that something that gets done on the hardware that you have to enable?
Yeah, so when we set up a host at the time of host as part of operating system, I think we will need to do these configurations. So how do we enable that, before the, as part of the operating system installation?
I think the way that, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that most people would do this is through using the user data feature. So you can provide user data for a bare metal host when it gets provisioned. So this is something like Cloud Init or Ignition if you're using a Core OS.
Okay. Okay, so we don't have those specific details called out as of now, right?
It's probably documented that we support the user data field, but I don't know that we cover in detail specific configuration steps for things like network interfaces, since that's generally OS specific. Let me see.
So as far as I remember, for SRIOV, configuring networking interfaces with SRIOV, We have a two-step kind of process. One where you actually split the physical interface to virtual functions. So that has to happen before the OS installation, and then you have to set Intel IOMMU on Intel-based NICs or a similar configuration, basically to turn IOMMU on at the kernel level. So how are we taking care of the hardware aspect of it? Like how do we, at what stage do you split the PF into VFs? Or do we assume that's always already done?
Yeah, thanks, Sandhya. I think that is relevant information. Yeah, so I think it has to be done before the operating system installation and configuring the physical function and the virtual function. So yeah, I think I stand corrected. It has to be before the operating system install.
Zhao, does your BIOS configuration handle any of these kinds of things? Do we expose any settings related to this kind of configuration?
So anyone, any idea how that can be handled?
I'm taking a look at the BIOS. I can share my screen here. Maybe that helps. Uh, so if you take a look at the BIOS configuration PR, it does look like there are some settings exposed here. So the PR that I'm looking at here is the PR for, it's in the chat. This is the PR for BIOS configuration. What I think a good approach might be to ask on the PR to see if this is covered. If not, you could file an issue that explains what kind of settings that you need to set, and we can investigate if Ironic supports doing it.
Yeah, I think this is more specific to the RAID, or where do I see what are the like requirements for the BIOS configuration that this PR is addressing?
So if you look at the diff and the files change tab, you can see the changes to the bare metal host API. So it introduces an iDRAC config struct. There does seem to be some SRI IOV things in there. I'm not sure about the redfish configuration, if it does that, but it's probably a discussion we should have on that PR, or possibly file an issue asking for how we can support that.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't looked at this PR. I took a look and see, try to contribute to this.
Okay. Yeah, the only thing I see related to this is whether it's enabled or not. It doesn't seem to have any kind of configuration related to it, but I'm not super familiar with this. Probably a good idea to ask on the PR here. Any other comments about this item?
No, I think I will just raise a uh, issue to check back on this maybe, and then we can see.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
The next item on the list is what is the nuclear path to deprovision a server in a rainy day scenario? Rodolfo, are you here? I don't see your name in the participant list. We can chat about it anyway.
He was here and he disappeared. I don't know where he went.
Okay. Why don't we give him a chance to come back? We can move on to the next item. So this is somewhat related to what we were talking about before. There's 2 PRs up for RAID and BIOS configuration that need review. Zhao, do you want to talk about these 2 PRs? Let's take a look at what the state of these are. Looks like there's been some reviews on these. When was the last comment? Looks like they've been open for quite a long time. Zhao said there's something wrong with his microphone. It looks like it's been a while for reviews on the BIOS PR, likewise for the RAID. So sounds like we need to get a few people to take a look at these.
There are some design reviews related to these as well that are still open.
Okay. Are they still being actively discussed, do you know?
Not as actively as I would like, but yeah, somewhat.
Okay.
Yeah, I had planned to try to get to these this week.
Okay. Sounds good. If other people are interested, the links are in the Metal3 Community docs, meeting notes.
I'll add the links to those design reviews too.
Great, thank you. Also from Zhao is another PR for soft power off. This also looks a bit stalled and maybe needs some help with reviews. Do you know if there's a design doc discussion related to this one, Doug?
That is the design review. Oh, sorry, wait, I was looking at the wrong entry. Yeah, I think there was one for soft power off too. That might have just been a, let me see if that's closed. No, I don't think we have one for that.
Okay.
Maybe there was a bug or something related to that one. I don't remember how that one came up, but
Okay.
yeah, that one is a little bit less contentious. I think it's a change in behavior and not really an API change. So.
All right, so it sounds like we need to get some more reviews on this PR and get it in if we're okay with the changes. It looks like it's been stalled for a while. The last active discussion was from January. Doug, would you be able to take a look at the changes? It looks like about a week ago they addressed some feedback on this.
Yeah, that one is on my list for this week too.
All right, thank you. The next one is for the hardware classification controller proposal.
Yeah. Okay, hi, I'm Digambar. So I'm working on this. Thanks to Doug for the reviews. I think he approved my patch, this PR. I request the other community members to take up a category for merging and final approval. Doug has, we had a pretty good conversation with Doug, and I appreciate his help on getting this done. Thank Doug.
Yeah, sure. Like Digambar said, I think this is in a good state, but I didn't want to just merge it without anyone else having a look at it. I know Michael had left some comments. Michael Rivnick had left some comments. And you know, it's the sort of thing that other people might be interested in too. So I wanted to give it at least a couple of days before merging and going ahead.
Okay, that sounds good. If you don't hear from anyone within a couple of days, I would say just mark it, looks good to me, and get it merged.
Yeah.
But if anyone wants to have a look before then, please do.
Hi, is it possible to briefly elaborate on what's the use case for the hardware classification controller?
Okay. So this is regarding, I think this is one of the requirements from airship community that we'll have to validate and classify the host before provisioning this. So as you can, I have mentioned in the motivation and goal that one of the requirement in airship for classification. As a user, I want to validate and classify the host based on my hardware requirement, so that I'll get to know that how many hosts match to my profile. And accordingly, I can go ahead and provision these hosts only. So this feature helps user to avoid runtime failures, also increases the performance for the workload deployments. That's the use case I think we are targeting as part of this. So we will label those hosts based on the profile if it is matches, so that those hosts will be taken for further provisioning and deployment. Kind of thing. Does that answer your question?
Okay, so basically it will introspect the host and classify them based on the type of resources it has.
No, no. So we are only pulling those hosts which are in ready state. Ready state is coming after introspection in bare metal object. So hardware classification control is separate controller which is running outside Metal Cube, and which actually takes only works with the host which is in ready state. Those hosts will be classified and taken for further provisioning.
Okay, what is the criteria for classification of the host, if you don't mind?
I think we have given there, as you can see, that there is a spec, in the spec that we have minimum CPU count, maximum minimum speed. All these things are mentioned there. So accordingly, each and every host we are taking a look at each and every host, and whether my CPU, I have 4 minimum CPUs, let's say 32 GB minimum size. So otherwise, minimum individual size of those lists. These are the criteria we are specifically going and checking against each of those.
Okay, does it have a ability to identify a host for the SRIOV, DPDK, these features also?
Currently not. This is the initial implementation, but we will add support for that. Maybe you can come up with your own requirement so that we can talk on it on bare metal channel. Me, you, and Doug.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let's take a look back at the agenda. Adolfo didn't join back, but maybe we can talk about this in case he watches the recording. So the question was, what is the nuclear path to deprovision a server in the rainy day scenario? Imagine that delivering a bare metal host to deprovision a host gets stuck VMO is not able, for some reason, to deal with this host, is there a recommended approach to kick things back into gear or force removal of the host?
Is this the same person that filed the bug about not being able to delete a host if it gets confused very early in the process?
Do you happen to, was it a recent bug?
Yeah, I'm looking for it. Give me a second.
Is it this one, bare metal host is not removed?
Yeah, that's the one. So maybe not the same person.
If registration and deletion are done at the same time, it seems that the bare metal operator can't delete it.
Yeah. I think it gets into a weird state where we're not doing enough with to force Ironic to delete things, maybe.
Uh-huh. Failed to save host status after registering. Operation cannot be fulfilled. The object has been modified.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand. Why is someone trying to register and delete a host at the same time?
I'm not sure what the case there would be. Maybe they, just happened to accidentally do that or something and then discovered that. I think this is not the same person, the bug author and the person who left the question. Was it Rodolfo?
No, this is not
Okay.
same. Yeah,
Okay.
these are different.
Yeah, so the way to deprovision the server, like if it's just completely broken and you need to get it out of the system completely, you would just delete it. And if it can't deprovision, I'm not sure what situation we would be in where we can't force it to, where we don't successfully force it to delete from Ironic, other than the one that was mentioned in that bug. And that's why I was wanting to see if it was the same person. But yeah, you just delete the resource. You could more gently deprovision by removing the image settings from the host, and that would just deprovision it. And then it should power it back off. But if that doesn't work, then deleting the resource should eventually allow it to delete. It may take a while because it does try to deprovision at that point. And then and then
So,
at that point you could re-register it and try again. Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry,
just
go ahead.
wanted to add like a possible use case in this context. Like, let's say we provision 44 nodes in our one site, and during that provisioning, let's say one of the node had a complete hardware failure, and we have to replace it completely with the new bare metal host. Now, this can happen during the time of deployment, and it can also happen once the target cluster is fully provisioned. And in later on, after 15 days, 20 days, that server completely crashed and the motherboard failed completely, and we had to, let's say, completely replace that that bare metal host. And then in that situation, how do we handle it?
Okay, so the one several weeks into the life of the cluster, you would want to add your new host as a separate resource and get that provisioned as a worker in your cluster by adding a machine for it, scaling up the machine set, whatever the right approach is, depending on how you're configuring your cluster. And then remove the old resource. And if Ironic can't talk to it, I think it will enter a failed state, which the operator will then force delete the host because it knows it's trying to delete it. So if it fails to deprovision, it should be okay. Have you encountered issues with taking that kind of approach, or was it just not clear what? Because I don't think that's written down anywhere. So
Yeah.
I don't know that we have any docs. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is really a day two scenario. Like, you know, if the target cluster is provisioned and fine, but later on we have to, you know, the operations comes and they have to handle it, right? I mean, remove that particular host from the cluster and then add a new host in its place. So I was trying to find, you know, if there is a proper documented or steps, you know, that can be done to handle it.
Yeah. I don't know that we've written anything down like that. I think we're relying on mostly on any procedures that would be written for any other implementation of the machine API. So you would do those parts, and then once the host is no longer being used, you could delete it. And that would actually, maybe we did write something down about that, because now I feel like we have to delete the host first to ensure it doesn't try to re-provision it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a timing issue there, but Stephen, is that in an internal document that we wrote that down, or is that in one of the public repos where we talked about that?
It doesn't sound familiar to me.
Okay.
I may not have
I'll
seen
find
it.
that. Yeah. It might be a good idea to start some documentation like this in the docs repo. So if you wanted to start something, Rodolfo, I could help fill in details and make sure the sequence seems right and that sort of thing.
By the way, this is not Rodolfo, this is
Oh,
Sudeep. I was
sorry.
just telling because we are in the same project and I have some
Okay.
ideas. So yeah,
I apologize for that. Yeah.
that's okay.
If there are cases that aren't handled, obviously this needs to be documented, but once we do get it documented, if there's cases that aren't handled, we should get bugs filed for it.
Yeah.
I know in my own testing, I've seen issues where the bare metal operator doesn't recover if inspection fails like the first time. So I've been trying to fix that. So if there are issues where you try to deprovision a host, it gets stuck and you can't actually delete it, we should get a bug filed for it.
I'm just trying to recall, do we have any like command from cluster API using cluster cuddle or anything like, you know, by which we can handle a single target like machine, we can delete it and then recreate it, part of the same target cluster?
I'm not really familiar with the cluster cuddle command.
Okay.
When I do things like that, I usually operate directly on the machine or the host on the cluster that's, you know, that I'm, you know, that has the problem. So I don't know if there's a way for that, you know, for cluster cuddle to reach through, or if you have to talk to the cluster directly.
Yeah, but do you think potentially this could be a solution like, you know, we just delete that machine via the cluster API command, and that command will work through the bare metal operator, right? To delete that bare metal host, and then we can re-provision it.
Yeah, if you delete the machine, it will deprovision the host, but it won't delete the host record. And then if you're using a machine set, the machine set operator will scale the machine set back up to replace the missing machine and re-provision, and it will find your host and try to use it again. So you actually have to delete the host first, and then delete the machine and node, and then add the new add the new host so that it gets re-provisioned and turned into a node. You know, you've got the chain of relationships that go from node to machine to host, and you've got to delete from the bottom up, basically.
Okay.
Doug, I put something in the chat. I'm not sure if that is the documentation you were referring to.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Sanja. Yeah, That's exactly what I was thinking of. For some reason, I thought that was in one of our internal repos. That's great. Thank you, Sanjay.
Okay, I think maybe we can just add this reference. This is a good reference back to question of Rodolfo, and then we may come back if we have further queries on it. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Doug.
Yep.
Thanks. That doc is great. Actually, I think this may be solving a problem that I had encountered. It's great when things are documented. I think that is it for the agenda other than issue triage. Is there anything else anyone wants to discuss before we go forward and look at the open issues? Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the new issues. I think there's 4 or 5 issues. The first one is bare metal operators should be provisioning bare metals using direct redfish calls instead of ironic, which enables us to boot over WAN. Second point, RAIDs and custom disk partitions. Well, that second issue is already handled, right? We have an open issue for RAID.
Yes, there's at least one. I mean, we had a review talking about that
Yeah.
earlier in the agenda. So.
Yeah. So disk partitioning is really up to the operating system. I'm not sure about the first part, and I think you replied as much. I don't think BMO could directly call a Redfish API to provision a host, right? Without implementing a lot of things.
Yeah, this is, I feel like this isn't the first time this has come up, and I think it came up in Slack as well. And yeah, I mean, you can't provision over Redfish, as far as I know. So.
I mean, you could boot virtual media without involving ironic, I imagine. I don't know. I don't know the Redfish API well enough. But
Yeah.
I think theoretically someone could write a provisioner alternative to ironic that supports some subset of features. But I don't know if it would be possible to do much without. Would you consider just closing this issue, or I don't know if there's something for us to act on here?
Yeah, I think after 2 weeks without a reply, it's probably safe to do that. I mean, if they want to talk about it some more, they can reopen it.
Yeah. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that looks fine.
The next one, need clarification for cluster creation and node provisioning with real hardware.
So this is Sumit here. I had raised this for some clarifications over like your Metal3 dev environment setup and the real setup. So we had already discussed this, and the latest firmware that we are working on, what we were working on was having some issue in the firmware. So we have switched back to the older firmware, and we are able to proceed till the node provisioning part. But currently the cluster provisioning is still under progress. So I would request community to keep this open for some time. You can check the latest update I have updated on Friday. And we also had discussion with Mail over a Slack channel and one-on-one meeting. So he has suggested us some changes. We are working on it.
Okay. Do you think this is awaiting more information then before we categorize this?
Yeah, you can put in that tag because we will update this once we go through. I mean, get passed through the next step. So.
Okay. For now, I'll mark it awaiting more evidence, and then if we decide that there's something to do here, we can categorize it.
Sure. No problem.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. The next one, running Metal3 dev-env removes old Go path. I think this was related to the Ansible playbooks. If you're running as a certain, I think if you're running as root, it looks like this is more or less ready to go. I'm going to mark this as a bug, I think. And since it's being worked on, I won't set a priority. The next one is broken v1 alpha 1 deployment scripts. The v1 alpha 2 scripts to provision target clusters are broken both for Ubuntu and CentOS. They should be removed. Okay.
It sounds like a bug, but aren't we on v1 alpha 4 now?
Yeah, it sounds like it's just a cleanup.
Okay.
There is also open PR to clean up v1 alpha 1 and v1 alpha 2 related code.
Let me find that so we can link to it. There we go. Great, thank you. The next one is the one we were discussing earlier. Bare metal host is not removed. I am interested in the use case of registration and deletion at the same time. But this probably sounds like it's a bug at least, or some kind of race that we're not handling correctly.
Yeah, I think I would agree with the classification there.
And I will throw it on the backlog unless someone thinks it needs a different priority.
Can you ask him to explain the use case? What happened there?
Sure.
It might be good information. Thank you.
It could be something like they realized really quick that they gave the wrong information or something. I don't know. But let's see what they come back with.
Yeah, I suspect that's probably the case.
The last one is how to enable SR IOV configuration for a bare metal host. Okay. This is the issue that we were just discussing.
Yeah, I just raised it. So yeah, we can look at it later maybe.
Is this a documentation issue, or do we think that I think there's probably work here. Maybe it's a feature.
Yeah, I think it will be a feature, yeah.
Okay.
I think Decumber had plans to add some more classification on top of what he's already done, but he wanted to get the framework and the basic stuff done first.
For the BIOS configuration, is that what you're referring to?
No, for the hardware classification.
Oh,
Work.
Yeah, it's a C part.
Okay.
So I think this would be something that he would take on later.
Sounds good. Let's take a look. I think that was all of the untriaged issues. I think we should probably take a look at the awaiting evidence and see if there's anything that's old that we've been waiting for. The first one is the reports that OpenAPI breaks with SDK. Actually, this looks like there might be something to tackle here. When running make test on the bare metal operator. Do we not run the unit tests as part of PRs? Thought we did.
I really thought we did too.
Maybe not. What is the Travis build doing? We do run the unit tests. Maybe we don't actually run make test though.
No, you know what? It looks like it runs make unit.
Mm-hmm.
Or yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Based on Kieran's comment here, it sounds like there is something to do.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Okay, so I think we can remove the awaiting evidence and mark this. I think this is a bug. And I would guess this is probably something we need to fix quickly. Let's take a look at the other issues here. Wrong replicas count in kubeatom control plane status. One metal cube dev end with 4 nodes, provision a control plane nodes, scale up by changing the replicas to 5 or 7. Oh, I see. I think we can park this issue, come back to it once upgrade succeeds. Well, it sounds like they've provided the information that they need, and that there does seem to be a bug here. So I will put this on the backlog. Next one is cat VM removes network data from bare metal hosts. If I do provisioning by bare metal host, then delete bare metal host and do provisioning by CAPI metal cubed machine, all work fine. Do we know anyone who's trying to use the network data with the bare metal host and Ironic?
I don't know of anyone else, no.
This is the first time I've heard. I know we exposed the option, but this is the first time I've heard of someone trying to use it.
Yeah.
There might be a bug for us to do. I wonder if I know that I've used it directly with Ironic and it worked fine. So maybe we're not setting the right API calls either in BMO, or maybe there's even a bug in Gopher Cloud.
Mm-hmm.
I think the evidence they've provided at least, so I'll put this in the backlog so someone can take a closer look at it. Disk status is not showing in hardware introspection data in custom resource.
Yeah, so Digambar and Doug had already discussed about this. So like the introspection is already returning the correct data. So like I'm not very pretty sure like what the tag should be, but Doug also can you please update if you want to add something, because he has written you already had discussions.
Yeah, it seemed like this was asking to expose status information in the place where we keep inventory data, and I didn't think we really wanted to do that.
Okay.
In other places we've talked about reporting that kind of information via Prometheus, and so there's the Ironic inspector. I forget exactly the name of the thing. There's a thing that exposes more Ironic data to Prometheus, and then whether or not a particular device is healthy would just be an ongoing monitoring thing.
Okay.
And so that's the sort of data you want to get into a system where you can alert on it. You can have alarms triggered and that sort of thing. And I don't feel like we want to hammer the custom resource with constant updates for that kind of thing, because that API is not really meant for that many writes. So
Prometheus export is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Ironic export.
Okay. Based on that comment, do you want to close this then? Do you think this isn't something we plan to implement?
I don't think that we are going to implement, because currently we are relying on the data that is received, and which is all correct data, I suppose. So if there is any discrepancy we find, we will open another bug, let's say. For time being, we can close, I suppose. What do you say, Doug? So
Yeah, I think you can close this. It's more discussion of the airship. They wanted a way to get the airs propagated back up to them, so I think it's better that they go ahead and get through Prometheus. I do agree with Doug's assessment.
good.
Are people using the Prometheus exporter? It doesn't look like this project has had an update in a long time.
Sanjay, did we
Explorer.
get that into OpenShift?
Yuri has been working on it, and it hasn't merged yet.
Okay. And sorry, I spoke over someone else.
Yeah, we are actually testing this out, like whether how it is working. So we'll have some update probably next week. Next week, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
The next issue is provisioning not starting soon enough when done repeatedly. What was the information that was needed? Sounds like they're planning to split this into 2 different issues. Is anyone aware of the current status of this bug? Let's see if they come back. The last one is need clarification for cluster creation and node provisioning with real hardware. Did we just look at this one?
Yeah. We just started discussion at the start. We have already marked for awaiting more evidence.
Oh, yeah, this was we added this label
Yeah.
during this call. Okay, sounds good. So I think that's it for the triage. Is there anything else anyone wants to chat about this morning? Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you.